The chamber was thick with tension, the kind that makes every cough, shuffle, and creak of a chair sound louder than it should. Cameras rolled, pens scratched against notepads, and somewhere in the crowd, whispers passed like sparks through dry grass. On the dais sat Pete Buttigieg, polished as ever, his expression a mixture of calm confidence and slight irritation. And across from him, Karoline, sharp, relentless, and unwilling to back down. The clash had been brewing for weeks. Karoline, a rising voice known for cutting through political niceties, had been questioning the transportation secretary's record with a persistence that unsettled even seasoned reporters. To her, it wasn't personal, it was accountability. But to Pete, it had become an annoyance. On this day, however, their simmering tension would boil over in a way no one could have scripted. It began with a single remark. Pete leaned back in his chair, sighing through his nose before speaking in a tone that carried the sharpness of polished condescension. "Perhaps," he said, "you should do your homework before questioning me further." The words landed like a slap in the chamber. A few staffers smirked. Others stiffened, sensing what was coming. Karoline's jaw tightened, her hands resting firmly on the stack of papers in front of her. She didn't immediately fire back. Instead, she sat still, letting the silence stretch until even Pete shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Then, in a calm voice that carried across the room, she said, "Secretary Buttigieg, I have done my homework." In fact, she lifted the stack of papers and let it fall against the table with a loud thud. "I've done yours too." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber. Pete's face froze, a polite mask, but his eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Karoline stood, papers in hand, and walked to the microphone on the floor. She looked directly at him, then down at the crowd, and began to read. She started at the beginning, his decorated service in the Navy Reserve, his time as mayor of South Bend. She acknowledged his Rhodes Scholarship, his Harvard education, and his meteoric rise in politics. She read it not with mockery, but with an eerie steadiness, each line punctuated by the weight of accountability. But as she went deeper, the tone shifted. She read about South Bend's struggles under his leadership, the tensions between the police force and the community, the uneven economic growth, the neighborhoods that felt left behind. She read about delays in transportation projects since he had taken office, about supply chain struggles that everyday Americans had borne the brunt of. She layered his achievements against his failures, his accolades against his oversights, weaving a story that was less about a resume and more about the stark gap between ambition and execution. Pete tried to interject at one point, raising his hand with a cool smile. But Karoline held firm, her voice rising just enough to silence him with "Oh."